science teacher at Tibetan Children's Village School, Lower Dharamsala, for about 7 years. As a recipient of Fulbright Scholarship, she completed her Masters of Public Health in Community Health from State University of New York, Stony Brook in 2012. And she also holds an advanced graduate certificate in health communications from Alan Elder Center for Communicating Science at Stony Brook University. She was also awarded the Fulbright Alumni Award for implementing a successful youth empowerment program for a group of newly arrived Tibetan refugee children in India, and currently she works as the head of Public Health Division in Department of Health, Central Tibetan Administration. So I welcome you all here. And
thank you, Chödenla, for this nice introduction. So today, I would like to speak about our healthcare system, but I think before we look at the healthcare system, it's very important to understand the history that led to the formation of the current healthcare system. So, in 1959, when the Chinese occupied Tibet, about 80,000 Tibetan refugees came to India. At that time, there was no refugee settlements, but they were based in camps in northern India, in Himachal, and they started working as road laborers. So at that time, the major health problems were definitely trauma because of separation from their parents, and then also because India was so hot, a lot of people, especially elderly people, died of malaria and heat, and also there was a problem of malnutrition and tuberculosis, TB. It's such a new disease in this community that before 1959 it was unheard of, but when we became refugees because of the changing social structure, because of the poor food conditions, this TB became a huge problem. And among the early Tibetan refugees, most those who suffer from TB were sent to sanatoriums throughout India. At the time, treatment was something different, that they were sent to some remote locations, So at that time, who provided the care? It was the Indian government. They set up some small medical camps, and they are the Indian doctors, and there are few Tibetan translators, or I could say social workers. They had to communicate the health problems to the Indian doctors. That was still around 1962. If I see, now, what are the major health challenges? Now, about 50 years has passed by, but if I see what are the major health challenges right now, it is TB, and then hepatitis B has become a huge public health problem in our community. And I think it's because we were never vaccinated when we were a child. And the child vaccination is the best way to prevent from hepatitis B, because infants, when you get hepatitis B infection as infant, that means you have more risk of chronic infection. And the other thing is now, because of changing lifestyles, cancer. Now, that was what I mentioned before. So it was the Central Relief Committee. The Central Relief Committee is actually formed by the Indian government. They formed a committee to look after it called Central Rehabilitation Committee. That was the first organization that had built those medical camps. And that was around Kullu, Himachal, based also in Manali, where a lot of the Tibetans were based. I think my parents were also there at that time. So after that, in 1960s, from 1962, the Tibetan settlements were built. The Tibetan settlement in Bailakupi in South India was the first settlement. And at that time, what happens? Those by a collaboration of Tibetan administrators along with international and local donors that helped build these dispensaries. They were first based in tents, and later buildings were set up. And each dispensary had one community health worker. And it's surprising that those social workers or medical translators that were based at the tent-based location, they later worked as community health workers. And my dad was one of them, because he was a medical translator at the time, That's a long history, and I can relate to that. And if I see this one health center in Tibetan Bailakubi settlement, it was set up by an Indian organization called MyREDA. It's called Mysore Rehabilitation and Developmental Agency. So I think that both the Indian as well as the foreign and local NGOs helped build the early rehabilitation healthcare system in our community. And as I said, the social workers and translators, they later worked as the community health workers in those small health clinics. But then after about 20 years, there was a need to form a centralized healthcare system. So in 1981, Tibetan Department of Health was established, and it was established under the Central Tibetan Administration. So all those healthcare centers where their administration was shifted to the DOH. And currently, and what is the main aim of this? All the healthcare systems under the department is to provide primary healthcare service, outpatient service, and together with a form of referral system to the other more tertiary healthcare systems in the Indian community. And not only that, our main goal of the Department of Health is health for all. We don't differentiate whether it's a Tibetan or non-Tibetan. We provide a holistic primary healthcare service which is subsidized, reduced cost, and it's free for the destitute to both Tibetans and the Indians. And not only that, the Department of Health, we also create programs and we implement health programs through those health centers to the different Tibetan refugee community in India. So this is a part of the history. Now, so this is the Department of Health. You might have been to the library. It's just near the library. So right now at the head office we have about 29 staffs, and the health minister as well as the health secretary is the head of the Department of Health. And this organization is registered as a charitable organization and it's called Tibetan Voluntary Health Association. So this is the organizational structure. We have the health minister, and then we have the secretary, and then we have an additional secretary. Additional secretary takes care of about all the health hospitals, and then we also have a psychosocial program. And the later slides will discuss in more detail about these programs. Slide down, discussion. What is it? So these are the health centers throughout India. We have 7 major hospitals, and 4 of the hospitals are located in the state of Karnataka. And then we have one hospital in central India in the Tibetan settlement in Bandra. And we also have another hospital which again has formed, it's called Bikili, So, and we have 42 small clinics, which has the shape of this like a person. And then we have about 5 primary health centers. So in a total we have about, in here it's written 47, but now we have only 42 functional healthcare. So in a total we have 54 health facilities throughout India. And so this is one, and we have another one. We have one special children. We have a school for children with special needs, and it's located at Dehradun. And the other one is in the big hospitals and primary health centers. We have a staff, at least about 30 staffs, So, but in the smaller health clinics, we have about only 1 health staff, So this is about the location of our healthcare system. And in Ladakh, together with the health center, we have 2 mobile health clinics because some of the Tibetan communities are based in nomadic regions, so we use a mobile health clinic. So this is the region-wide distribution. If you see Himachal Pradesh, this is the state where majority of the Tibetan refugee community is based. So we have 16 health facilities in Himachal Pradesh, and in Karnataka we have 4. So I think if we see throughout the Indian states our health centers are based, and they're all based in the Tibetan settlements in India. So if you see in Jammu Kashmir, one health center is located in Ladakh. I have not counted the mobile one, and one health center is located in a Tibetan settlement in Kashmir, which are Muslim origin. So these are a separate Tibetan community in Kashmir, which are not Buddhist, but they are Muslim. So this is one. And in Arunachal Pradesh, we have four health facilities. So in Arunachal Pradesh, in the state, it's a very remote location. We have four different Tibetan communities, and if you have heard, it's a Myo, Tizu. So in these remote locations, there's huge poverty, and it's a totally remote access. So through our health centers and through regular communication with our health staff, we are able to provide healthcare access to the Tibetan community. So in a way, through a network of 54 health centers, we are able to provide primary health care to all the Tibetan refugees in India. And we have about 260 health staff. And if you see in if you see, there are about 92 community health workers, but there are only 4 doctors, and there are about 26 nurses. So you can see that the community health workers are the backbone of our primary healthcare system, And I think it's a way to fill the gap of manpower. So when the Tibetan refugee community is quite new, it's just only 50 years, and it takes a lot of time to get skilled health care workers, especially when we are refugees, and the education system is sometimes very much competitive in terms of medicine, So, and if you see our health staff, they have multiple roles because it's very difficult to provide specialized care for everyone. So they are social workers, they are counselors, they are data collectors, and besides providing treatment to our community. And when I was visiting one of the health center, it's really 3 months healthcare training was provided, and it was provided through Delhi Hospital. Initially, it was provided. I think they learned, some of the community health workers, they worked in Indian Army, and through their practical experience, they gained some skills, and then they started working as community health workers. But in 1981, together with Dalek Hospital, it's the big hospital in Dharamshala, we created a community health worker trainings program, and until now, we have trained about 256 community health workers, many of whom have retired. And I think this training forms the backbone of this healthcare workforce, and it's really surprising that the health clinic where my dad worked, I'll show you, I think. My dad later worked as a community health worker here in this, I think he worked near Ponta site, this small called Kamrao. So here. So I've seen how they're able to provide care through my personal experience, that they have limited education. Many of them have not completed high school, but through their practical experience and through, I think, a more sort of involvement with people and learning through experience, they have been able to provide, I think, very good care for the people, And this is a book, this Where There Is No Doctor, Infectious Disease Prevention and Control. So at the Department of Health, and it's very important to know that these programs are all implemented at the field level by the community health workers, doctors, nurses, and other staffs. So we have a TB control program, we have a malaria and leprosy program, we have a drinking water and sanitation program, and one of the important programs that we have is mother and child health. And we provide free vaccination for children under 5. We provide free antenatal care to all pregnant women. And I think the other one is, this has been quite a recent program, HIV/AIDS prevention program, where we provide medical care together with awareness to those who are infected with HIV and also to all other people. So, and in health promotion, we have a substance abuse prevention rehab program. This is a very successful program because we send these special youth which have problems of substance abuse to selected rehabilitation centers in India. And other one is health information system. Now, in every community, it's very important to know what's the status in terms of quantitative data. So, since 2011, we have started a computerized health information system, and through a network of computers and softwares, all the data is entered at the field level, and then they send those files to the Department of Health. So at present, we have 27 computerized health information system, and 9 are based in Nepal. And one of the important developments is now we are trying to integrate the mother and child health program into the data system so that we'll be able to understand the vaccination coverage and antenatal care in the women. And the other one is really important because, as I said, we mainly focus on primary care, and prevention is an important part of primary care. So we provide health education and training, provide health education at all the Tibetan refugee settlements, either through staffs based at Dharamshala or the field staffs. And together with it, we also provide training. It's very, as I said, capacity building of the health staff is really important, and so we provide health trainings like mental health training, reproductive training at Dharamshala or at selected hospitals throughout India, so that our staff will be more skilled in performing their duties. And this is a very important program. This is a refugee community. There are a lot of destitute and disabled people. So we provide social stipends, and we also provide aid and appliances in terms of hearing problems, vision, And also we have, to the mental health patients, we also provide about 50% subsidized medical support. And in TB control, the main thing is we have a very good access to TB treatment care. So in today I was reading a newspaper that there are about 3 million undiagnosed TB cases in the world, and about 30% are based in India. That means about 3 lakhs undiagnosed TB patients in India. But in our community, the main focus is we first try to screen our patients through education, through door-to-door screening, and then we provide up to 100% free TB medicines based on their socio-economic status. So I could say that the access to care is much better than in the Indian community. But I think since the community is very small, the TB spreads very fast. So I think more progress needs. We are trying to strive towards more awareness and how we can develop certain behavioral interventions to reduce those risk factors. But I think there are certain behavioral, but I think because it's a refugee community, we don't have like a private life, it's all public, So sometimes it's very difficult to take interventions when it's rooted in our own structure and our own identity. So I think in that way it's very difficult to control TB, but I think we are moving forward, And mental health program, because it's a refugee community and trauma it's an inherent nature, but because we are Buddhists and we have spiritual coping mechanisms, but still we are human beings, so definitely, so in that case mental health is also an issue, and I think in recent years based on a mass screening and to vaccinate all those who are negative, but that's very costly, and one of the big challenges we are facing in hepatitis B is that most those who are infected with hepatitis B, they're either taking Tibetan medications or they're not taking any medication. Why do you think so?
They don't know they have.
Because the medicines are highly costly. It's very costly, So it's and this is one sort of a policy issue, how we can reduce the cost of hepatitis B in developing countries, and so this is one thing we are struggling about. We go and create awareness, but people ask, can we get medicines, So this is the thing we are trying to move forward to see what sustainable solutions we can think of in terms of providing care to hepatitis B. And other thing is, in terms of hepatitis B, people who are infected, they look very normal for about 20 years. And people who are normal won't like to take medication, So I think behavioral interventions are very important. And I would very want to admit that our community has made a lot of progress, but in terms of traditional behaviors, it's still very much existing, especially among the elderly people. And some people would like to take traditional Tibetan medication, though it has huge benefits, but the efficacy in terms of hepatitis B is, I think, it's little doubtful, But there are indications that they do clear early symptoms. But I think it's done not out of choice, but out of compulsion, And the other thing is, we have a Tibetan Medicare system, So it's a very nice program, and it's a welfare insurance scheme, So whereby, as I said, cancer and other chronic conditions are increasing and treatment is costly. So we developed a welfare insurance system whereby we are asking people to contribute a small amount of money, and for that we are providing some sort of care. So in that we have two schemes. For a family of 5, they will contribute 2,500 Indian rupees, and they will get treatment up to 100,000 Indian rupees. And we have collaborated this with a German aid agency called Maltesian International, and the infrastructural support is provided by Micro Insurance Academy. But it's a pilot project, and it's sometimes really difficult because it's a huge financial burden for the department as well.
How much did I pay? 2,500?
2,500.
2,500.
3,500. 3,000. Yeah. And if you are alone and have no family, you can pay about 950, and you will get treatment about 50,000. So I think in some way we are able to provide care through this new insurance scheme. And other one is we have a telemedicine project. So this is a project which we have started in Mainput Tibetan settlement. And we, through computers and internet, the patient interact with Indian doctors, and they diagnose the patient. So this is a way to fill the gap of shortage of doctors. So this is a pilot project which we are doing in Mainput. So as the Department of Health has expanded health programs, the one issue that we are facing is how to monitor the progress. How to see that the indicators of progress are achieved. And with limited manpower and specialized human resource, it's becoming difficult. But then we have to move forward. So we do a lot of monitoring, evaluation. We have a project section, and we, through routine phone calls, we do site visits, a lot of observations, and they send all the quarterly reports. And through that, we monitor what's going on with the project, what's the progress, what are the challenges, what are the failures, And other than that, we also, the project section of Department of Health, which I'm a part of, we write proposals, we send to the funding agencies, and then we're able to implement. But with the changing economic scenario, it's really difficult to get funding, So in 2013, we have 10 months, It's becoming very important to tackle and to understand what's going on in the school, what's the health condition of the children, And I worked as a teacher for about 7 years, and I was very passionate about that. So through funding and through a proposal and through a joint planning, for the first time we started this school health workshop. We coordinated this on 3rd October. And the good news and other important thing is that we also published a booklet. And this booklet was more focused on the mental and emotional, like homesickness, peer pressure, and mood changes during puberty. And as you see, India is a country which is very unsafe for girl child, So, and being refugees and being girls, we are also vulnerable to these issues. So we have focused more on sexual health components in this booklet, but also we need to think about the cultural relevance, because this is a developing country and we need to see how to best impart the message in a way people want to listen, you know, not run away from us. And other than this, we also started a strategic health communication workshop. There is a very nice institute in Delhi called John Hopkins Center for Communication. You know, it's a renowned world organization. So through two social behavioral scientists, they came to provide training about how to interact with the patients. You know, how to know about about the health problems, what's going on, and to tackle stigma and other cultural problems. We are also providing mother and child health education, and through this education they also get information about when to vaccinate their children, you know, what's the right time to get antenatal care, you know. In recent years we have focused a lot on HIV, especially among the youth, you know, because the children who drop out of the school, they are a big risk factor, you know. So we have, and now in December 1, we are again having HIV/AIDS Day, and we are trying to plan to see how to create new educational outreach awareness programs throughout the month of December. And as I said, we have collaboration with some substance abuse rehabilitation centers in India, where we send the youth who have drug abuse problems, you know, and the success rate is quite high, you know. In the recent school health workshop, there's one drug abuse victim who had drug issues for about 13 years, and he was rehabilitated through one of the centers, and he came to speak about his experience, and that was very touching when we had about 40 children, 40 school staffs, you know. So in a way, this is a wonderful program. So what are the future implications? Definitely we need to make more informed decisions. So we are using health data to see how we can focus, because we have limited resources, you know. We are having big financial problems at the department, because we have to provide salaries to all the staff, we have to develop programs. So it's becoming more and more challenging in recent years. So we have to see how to develop more evidence-based and cost-effective health programs, you know. And the other thing is, we are also trying to improve the vaccination coverage, you know. If the children are healthy, definitely the community will be healthy, you know. So we are also going to, through the health data and integration, we are trying to improve the rate of vaccination among the children, especially hepatitis B vaccination, you know. Our parents were never vaccinated with hepatitis B, but we want to make sure that the future generations, the coming generations, are fully vaccinated and they become free of hepatitis B infection, you know. And definitely this is an important need, you know. This community, science education and health literacy, all these are very new things, you know. So I am the first Tibetan, I am the first member in my family to go to a school together with my brothers and sisters, you know. Our parents never got science education, never heard of germs and bacteria, you know. So definitely healthy behavioral change interventions are needed to see what's the scientific, why you want to wash your hands, you know, why you want to eat vegetables instead of meat, you know. So all these things need to be educated to these people, you know. So we need to focus more on these interventions. And other thing is, as I said, trying to develop sustainable financing solutions, you know, to address funding shortage to manage health centers. How to develop some sort of innovative funding solutions so that we can be able to sustain this health system, you know. And again, finding ways to fill the gap of shortage of doctors, you know. This is a big problem, but I think for the last 50 years we have managed with the community health workers and nurses. And the other good thing is that now there are a lot of nurses graduating, you know, a lot of young Tibetan girls who are graduating with nurses, you know. So what the Department of Health is trying to do is some of the elderly community health workers, they are retiring, so they are trying to bring in the nurses, qualified nurses, so that more and more skilled people will fill in the gap. But I think this is a very painful transition where some of the older people might lose jobs, but I think this is a step which we might have to take, you know. so that we were able to provide employment for the unemployed nurses, and those who want to serve in the community, But there are a lot of nurses who are working as volunteers in the health centers, So we have to think about, in a way, how we can balance this inequity, in terms of manpower. So the final thought is, I think, I'm not exaggerating, but I think our healthcare system is a unique refugee healthcare model, and I think we have, and the experiences that we have learned through the 5 decades, I think the other refugee communities and humanitarian agencies, they have a lot to learn from us, how we're able to develop a very organized health setting. As one of the tenets, or one of the basic foundations of our healthcare system is it's totally subsidized, free, and it's done with good motivation. So we are providing a compassionate and holistic healthcare service. The TB nurses wouldn't throw medicines on the TB patients, but they go and talk and offer the medication. So this is a way, or I think other Western models, profit institutions can learn about how we are able to sustain and provide care for our people. I think this is for now. Thank you. And any questions? They're welcome. But they're
and that's the step. So they have to stay in the hospital for 24 hours. And is it CTA that's not funding this, but providing this insurance?
Yeah, so we are providing through CTE, yes, through Department of Health.
Okay, and are you working with an Indian insurance company?
No, we are working with Micro Insurance Academy.
And they're from Switzerland?
I think it's a collaboration between an international NGO.
Oh, yeah?
But I think if you need there's some information on.
Okay.
Yeah, you can get some.
All right, I'll get it from you.
Okay.
Okay. And it's good for 1 year?
It's good for 1 year, and you can renew it, Because people, we have the habit of going to a spiritual master to see which hospital should I refer to,
And an emergency, you can't do that.
Yeah, that happens in our community, So these are all the social, cultural factors. So now it's all open. You can go if hospital A and B, if the spiritual practitioner through some sort of like a divination, go to B.
Okay.
So they can go to B because it's all now all covered.
Okay. And you said stomach cancer screening program. Is that new?
That's a new program,
And there's a lot of it in this community.
So
how does that work?
So we are trying to develop a framework, So at present we are trying to provide care screening about only 100 suspected cases, who have chronic gastric problems, So we are trying to, through the health centers, we are trying to find the numbers and then try to locate them and provide screening. This is a pilot program, And stomach cancer develops very slowly. It's something like hepatitis B,
Well, then what are the symptoms of hepatitis B?
So hepatitis B in early conditions, more like jaundice, yellowing of eye, nausea. The vaccination can prevent hepatitis. You can prevent hepatitis for about 50 years, So
Are you a doctor?
Yeah.
You want one?
Nurses.
Oh, welcome.
Stay for a while.
Volunteer, right?
You volunteer. Not
We've got no time on this day, but do you need?
definitely, as I said, we have acute shortage of doctors, But I think all the Western doctors, they first come to Dharamshala, they think this is a settlement, and they just go back, But I think the main characteristics, the main community lies in remote locations throughout India. This is just a center of Tibetan center, not a settlement. If you want to see a settlement, then you have to go to a settlement. But we also focusing on the chronic conditions in the reproductive system, They also need to know what's pregnancy and stuff like that so that they can make more informed healthcare decisions, So this is one innovative program. Will be starting next week.
Wow, next week.
Thank you so much for listening.
Can I ask you a personal question? You were a school teacher for 7 years. I was one for more than 30. But what is it because of what your dad did and his influence that you got interested in public health and all that?
I think it's not on camera.
Sorry.
I'd like to thank Ms. Tia Pamela for being here and sharing with us this very detailed information on healthcare system in Tibetan community Nepal. And I would also like to thank each one of you for coming here, taking your time on the care system. Thank you so much. And as a token of appreciation and gratitude, I would like to present to her a white scarf. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have refreshments over there. Thank you so much.